This is just a little thank you note to President Donald Trump and happy birthday. I know you just had your 72nd birthday, and many of us, including myself, really appreciate tremendously your courage and willingness to take on your current role in spite of the fact that you knew, and I know you looked at this very carefully, you knew that it would mean subjecting yourself and your family to incredible slander and lies and attacks of all kinds, potential attacks on your life and on the lives of those you care about. Media's already been trying to get that happening and hasn't backed off at all. Anything good you do, they criticize and twist it into something bad. So I really appreciate your courage. You've done a lot of incredibly great things in spite of the opposition from the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, most of it, and all of the media and the people who have supported so many criminal activities in the past. When the Bush's war on Iraq was supported by this corrupt media, and Obama's destruction of the sovereign country of Libya with Hillary's help, that was supported by the media. The fact that they're all hating you, and have since you first decided to run, is actually a kind of an endorsement, you know, for the value of what you're trying to do. I appreciate your stopping TPP. That was a tremendous achievement that most Americans don't even really appreciate, but it was incredible, saving our sovereignty. I appreciate you're also getting out of the Paris Climate Accord, which was a complete fraud. I'm not saying that from a shallow point of view at all. I've been a devoted environmentalist since the mid-1960s, but I recognize that what they were doing in the Paris Accord was just one step further toward installation of a world tyranny. It had nothing to do with protecting the environment at all. You know, anybody who looked into it at all could see that. So thank you for getting the U.S. out of that. Thank you for starting to secure the borders. That was critical, because having wide open, unregulated borders is suicide for any country. A lot of countries recognize that. Mexico, for example, you can't just walk into and do whatever you want. Certainly can't go there and start voting or get welfare as a just illegal intruder. It doesn't happen. It shouldn't happen anywhere. And I know that you're trying to help legal immigrants have a smoother process, and that's great. That's also not explained on mainstream television, but I've been watching what you're doing with that, and thank you for that also. Getting rid of stupid regulations, including an EPA, and I say this as an environmentalist, that's great. They were doing things like putting people in prison for collecting rainwater, having multiple different agencies have to go over and over and over and over this approvals for the same thing, and just making good projects impossible. That's not supposed to be their job. And I know that you really care about keeping the air and the water and the land clean. What I would like to suggest, Mr. President, if you would listen to me on this, is that if you really want to keep the air and the water and the soil clean, there's a few things you have to learn about, sir, and either I or someone else who knows about them can easily bring you up to speed on them. One is this global geoengineering project, where they're actually spraying. I know it's unbelievable, but I'm assuming that you don't know about it because you haven't talked about it. They're literally spraying toxic metal compounds on the largely unsuspecting population, contaminating the water and the soil and the air. There's also biological elements in the spray residues. They've been documented by labs that have identified them. I know we've had some of the researchers on our show. I've done a lot of looking into it myself as well. This is a massive terrorist crime, and it should be stopped immediately. I'd like you to look into that and act as appropriate. Realize it's going on around the world, so there's certainly an element of world government behind it that needs to be respected as a force that has to be dealt with carefully, but it does have to be dealt with. The other thing, if you want clean air, water, and soil, is to stop fluoridation all over the country overnight. Fluoridation has never helped tooth decay at all. That's well documented, even in the CDC's own website, and they figure nobody's going to do the research, and all the doctors are just going to believe what they memorize in medical school, which is largely corrupted by the industries, fluoride and vaccine industry and all that. So fluoridation needs to be stopped if you want clean water. A lot of the chemicals that are going into public drinking water are unacceptable, and need to educate yourself on that, sir, as quickly as you can. In farming, we know enough now. I've been involved in agriculture since the mid-60s, and organic farming, real organic farming, not limited to what USDA defines it as. Real organic farming is vastly superior to farming with chemical fertilizers, but it requires understanding the soil and the ecosystem in the soil, and if you take care of that, then most of the apparent need for pesticides just goes away. GMOs are the obvious part. They should be banned worldwide, in each country, of course, separately. But the chemical fertilizers are a disaster. They do not feed the world. They just cover up real agriculture and what should be done to take care of the soil, what has been called regenerative agriculture. And Organic Consumers Association has talked a lot about that, other environmental groups. And they're right. What they're wrong about is the kind of criticism of you that most of them engage in. But this is a big thing that has to be dealt with as quickly as possible, sir. It's a deadly danger to not just America, but the whole world. So I'd be happy to contribute any information that you are interested in for that. Let us know, or from anyone else. It's not an ego thing. Anybody can help you with this who knows about it. Very, very critically important. The other thing is that EMF radiation, that what they call RF radiation or microwave radiation, this is an extreme danger, not only to humans, but also to all life forms. Even trees and plants are negatively impacted by microwave radiation. And there are alternatives that are available immediately. In fact, most of the country already has fiber optic cables installed, and you can use these devices. The computers and all these other wireless devices can be adapted to plug into an Ethernet cable that is connected to fiber optic, and that eliminates the danger and the cancer risk, all these things, to humans and other life forms. This needs to be dealt with immediately, and you're being pressured, as are members of your cabinet, by this huge industry, what they call the telecommunications industry, and they've even gone so far as passing an act that makes people think it's illegal for them to object if their health is being destroyed by microwave radiation. But it's not anything that prevents that kind of questioning is clearly unconstitutional and void. So you need to turn this around right away, sir, and learn the truth, not from the industry, because that's totally corrupt, as most of these huge global industries unfortunately are. But you need to learn it from the independent researchers, like ones we've had on our show recently, and they'll be happy to educate you about it, as well as the options, so that we don't have to sacrifice internet speed. In fact, fiber optic cable is faster than wireless, and it's safe, and this is all available, so you need to know about that. There are other issues like this too. I don't want to make this video incredibly long, but the important thing is I recognize you as probably the greatest president that America's ever had, not because you've made no mistakes. You know, you got yourself pressured into shooting missiles at Syria and blaming Assad for things that he wasn't guilty of, and for not meeting with Putin, which you should have done right away. But I recognize you as great because of your intent. It's very, very rare to have a president who is there to actually help the country. And he's sacrificing his own well-being, risking his life, standing up against overwhelming assault from the dishonest media because he wants to help his country and indirectly the world. And I think that you're absolutely in that category. Been watching you carefully for a long time. John Kennedy, I think, was the last one before you that had an intent like that. He was willing to shut down the Federal Reserve, which is another one of those little issues, sir. If you really want the economic success of America, the Federal Reserve has to be shut down. Ron Paul was 100% right on that. It's not part of the government. It's above the law. It's siphoning off a huge amount of the wealth of the country and controlling most of the members of Congress and global corporations. It's like the famous quote long ago from one of the Mayor Rothschild, I think it was. He said, "I don't care who makes the laws if you just give me the power to control the currency." Well, Wilson gave that, unfortunately, to the so-called Federal Reserve, and you need to take it back. Finish what John Kennedy started that way. You have more strength, and I think you can do it. And many of us will support you. So, as a bottom line, thank you so much for being an honest, well-motivated individual who got into the presidency. I'm sorry you're being so mistreated, which I'm watching every day. And your ability to stand against that is incredible. So, next step, fill in these areas where you urgently need to learn what's actually going on so that you can act to improve some really critical areas, any of which could be suicide for the country, but also could be a new Renaissance age if they're addressed in a positive manner. I know you can do that. So thank you for whatever you can do, sir, and many of us appreciate you greatly.